as you know, I'm always looking for amazing situations, individuals or companies who are paying a brilliant attention to whether it is their clients, their patients, or maybe the community in which they serve. Scott Stratton is like no one that I know. He is obviously one of the most incredible speakers that I've ever seen. Anyone who's seen him on stage will know that. He's also the author of several books, Unmarketing being one of my favorites, Unselling being another one. But what Scott's really phenomenal at, I think, is his ability to engage a community. I've had the privilege of being friends with him for many years. But what I've loved is how he has the ability to notice what's happening around him, notice what brands are doing well, but also notice how individuals are using things like social media. So it's an absolute privilege to welcome a dear friend, a colleague, and just someone I deeply admire, and also expose you to the fabulous, talented rock star, Scott Stratton. Thanks for joining us.
I never know what to do when somebody's talking about me and there's video playing. It's like a Will Ferrell out of Talladega Nights.
So it's like spotlight.
What do I do while I'm waiting? I am happy and honored to be part of this, Nate. Thank you for thinking about me.
So the book is all about attention. How does attention pay? And the premise of the book is that we all think we're paying attention, Scott, but no one knows how. And I don't think people understand the consequences of not paying attention. But if I use that word attention to you, what does attention mean?
I think attention itself is the problem is people use the word attention and they want to get attention. And that's really why I think most brands are paying attention, is because they want the attention, right? And I think that's the opposite. I think attention, to me, the good version of the word is keeping the pulse of your customer, community, marketplace, family, whatever that's going to be, and then adjusting accordingly.
Right.
And the problem is attention is a selfish word in the way it's being used a lot. I don't think it can be manufactured. I think that you know who's paying attention to you, and you know what brands are listening for the sake of wanting to listen, and ones who are doing it because they don't want to be bashed on Twitter. You know, there's a big difference between that. I think attention goes hand in hand. You can't have community without attention.
Right.
In the right way, and in the wrong way, it just turns into a train wreck of nothing more than self-serving people.
One of the things that we talk about in the book is that in order to get attention, you've got to give attention. So I really believe in standing in service of people first and being able to really be attentive. And we make the distinction between paying attention as being present in this moment, but being attentive is a process. And I think that's something that you've done really well with one of the community groups that you manage. I've been involved in social media groups for years, and I've never seen one so well facilitated as the one that I'm a part of, your private group. And I've seen people who maybe get out of line occasionally, and you've done a brilliant job of managing them. So talk to us more about, managing the attention of a community.
Managing them is a good term.
I think diplomatic.
It's smacking them upside the head. I ever since, like yourself, I've been involved with online communities, either running them, contributing to them, or owning them for over 20 years, whether it's through the old PHPBB message boards to IRC channels to name it. And they've never changed. The dynamics of successful ones versus unsuccessful has never changed. I brought it up when marketing came out, was a term called social currency, which is you have to invest your social currency before you try to withdraw anything. And if you try to come into a community and just take right away, you have a balance of zero. And people are like, well, that group's not doing anything because nobody responded to me. Well, it's because nobody knows who you are. Right. Nobody cares until you care about them. And that's a big part. And I took all that 20 years and decided, I wanted to create a community because I do what I do, which is complain that there was nothing online for fellow professional speakers. It's a very nomadic industry, as you know. It's a very lonely industry. It's not only lonely, meaning you're by yourself on the road, but none of us know what we're doing. And I figured if we could have a community of us that together could know that we don't know what we're doing, it would make it a lot less lonely. But I knew that through my experience, I had to do a few things that would make it work. And things like, I think it needs to be closed door. And that's not for everything and everybody, but if you want a mind meld, if you want a mastermind feeling of something, that you need to make sure you have some kind of trust. that no random person can come in and just start talking with no kind of preface or kind of accreditation for it. And then it was kind of like there was and take a lot from Michael, our mutual friend Michael Port's stuff with the velvet rope, which is not everybody gets in, and that we have there has to be a common interest or theme. The community is built on something, and because communities in real life are built on something, whether it means it's your local block that you live on, that's what you have in common, or you're all part of a certain down the road we have a place where the all veterans can go. Like we all have something that bonds us together. And so we had a group of speakers. It was going to be private and locked down, and only I could admit people. Because you and I have an equal level of a BS meter with it. We don't add that to the group, because what happens is these loud, obnoxious, well, more than me, come in and they overtake the group, and then the people who can really benefit from it are who are the lurkers a lot of the time. And our Speak and Spill is no different than most groups, where 10% of the group is the main posters. 10% of the group probably have muted it or just never even looked at it since. And a good huge chunk in that middle is the ones who learn. Maybe will click like or speak up, but just because they're not being vocal doesn't mean they're not there. It's the silent majority that actually keeps the thread of a group together. So when we do an event once a year in person, like we did last year, we have 20% of a virtual group show up and fly into a place. That's a heck of a number.
For a day.
For a whole day.
From all over the country.
In an industry where you're always on the road.
Yeah, by choice on a weekend.
And that really showed us, what it meant. And at the end of the day too, and I think this is actually more important than I bring up sometimes, I get a hell of a lot out of it. Like the person who runs it, every day I go in there, I get a lot out of it too. So I get satisfaction, but I also rule it with an iron mouse.
Yep. Which I love.
That has to be that, because I know what kills virtual communities and loses that attention, which is things like drive-by postings.
Define that. I love that. And I know what you mean, but define it for people who are watching.
This is what killed LinkedIn groups, I think, in the early days, where people would post a link to their own blog post, just post it in a bunch of groups and say, come read this. And it does two things. One, you don't care what happens with that post. You're just you're blasting.
Look at me, look at me, look at me.
You're trying to get attention. And the worst you can do in a community, especially one you're trying to foster and grow, is try to pull the attention out of the community. So when you post something in it and say, come see my blog post, that's the number one thing I probably deleted in the group.
That's a cool thing about taking them out. I hadn't thought about that. You're actually taking them out of the community. Nice.
And that's why you'll see, and one of our friends, Ron, mentions this in the group a lot, because I slapped his hand last year about it. He's like, hey, I can answer your question. Let me know. I'll send you an email with all my answers. And I wrote and I said, can you post the answer here?
Yeah.
Because that's where, if you go one-to-one, and I know some things you need to talk privately about or a phone call or something, but when you post, then everybody benefits from it. And when I had somebody post there, they had this is last year as well, they posted a link and said, here's my speaker tips on my blog. And I deleted it and I wrote them, and I do it. I know it takes something for them to post it. So I write every single person I delete something from, I write to them privately.
Right.
I say that this is why I've removed it. Here's how you can fix it. And here's the point, that nobody is bigger than the group itself.
And I think that's key. I watched you masterfully take down a post and repost it, which gave beautiful attention to the original author of the post, highlighted them and elevated them in the community in a way they may not have thought of, and took the potential. They weren't intending to be selfish in any way, I imagine, knowing the individual, but because you positioned them so elegantly, it elevated the post in the minds of the person. And I watched it all unfold within moments, and I remember texting you and saying, classy, nice job.
Wait, I just saw what you did. But here's because I have a very simple rule. When somebody posts a link to their own thing, whether it's their own post, the majority of the time, and even though I'm an angry person in front of everybody, I actually believe that most people have good intentions. Yeah. And so when I write to them, I always write the same thing, which is, although what you linked to was relevant, was actually really good, and really useful for the group, one of three things will happen when everybody else sees this post come through the group, which is, one, this is how you're supposed to do it in this group, so I'll post mine. Two, this is how you're supposed to do it, I didn't think so, and I'm going to leave. or 3, this is how you're supposed to do it, and I'm going to mute it because I don't want to see these posts, or I'm going to leave the group. And all 3 of those are unacceptable to me. So that's where I took that. I read the post. And I posted it myself as a third person in it.
Beautiful.
Because I think I want the group to still value, but I don't want people to say, oh, this is what we do, because every one good post, there's 7 self-serving ones that are going to come out.
And I think too, there is a weight that goes behind it because you're endorsing it. So that's lovely to elevate the person. But I also think that it is demonstrating how to pay attention in the kindest way too. So you're doing the private one-on-one conversation. You're important. I see you. I hear you. I know you're trying to add value. Let me help you with that. But there's also the way you role model in a community how things are handled. And like I said, I've been involved in so many Facebook communities, but the only one I check every day is Speak and Spill, because my friends are there. It adds value. I can just go in and make comment and say, I see what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. Or, well, that's really shitty. Or, yeah, that's really great. So I think that it built a community for me. And you and I know that, like when I first joined, you invited me in, and then I saw some conversations. I was like, oh, I can't see that, and out I went. And you're like, why did you leave my group? So there's a level of attention you give. And it was our friend Judson who kicked my butt and said, you need to get back in. And I think I came begging, can I please come back in, Mr. Stratton?
But your example is a great example of sometimes it's like you literally walk into a club.
Yeah.
You walk in there and you're like, what's going on here? This is not my thing. Because anybody listening or watching right now has walked into a bar or a restaurant or even an event. You walked in, you went, nope. Well, that's what can happen. That's why I really try to be pretty vigilant on the post, because you never know who's walking in for the first time. Like if we post something and you and I see it and Judson sees it or Ron sees it or something, and we already have built up that community trust.
True story.
And so it's like people making jokes about something. So if people drop a man bun joke on me, it's one of you guys, it's part of the deal. I get it. But if somebody does that joke and I don't know them, I'm like, and who are you?
Yeah. Right. So you've got to earn the right for attention, I think, too. That's the other thing. Yeah. So I understand people lurking in a community, and I think that can be valuable to a point, but I think there's also a commitment you need to make is if you are going to be part of it, then like, comment, share, add value. And I think the combination of the online with the face-to-face really makes this an even stronger community now.
Yeah, that is the most upsetting thing for me running that community is I know the stats and I know how it all breaks down of commenters versus people who lurk. And it frustrates me though. There's a lot of people who don't. That it's such a beneficial, like people will come up to me I'll see them at an airport or another event. They're like, I love the group. I'm like, then comment, then say something. Like it really, because that's what fuels it. And I also know that there's an intimidation factor. Some people are intimidated, especially with our group. We have a group of people who are very successful paid speakers to people who are just moving into that professional speaking from corporate or something.
Right.
I asked once, why don't you post? So it was I did like a reverse psychology. And so people started posting, and it was like, they're saying, well, I don't feel like I belong on that stage or that level. And once they get that out there, you can see it breaks it down a bit. And that's really nice.
Yeah, I think that when you think about attention as a concept and social media as one of the things, that I have also posted about the fact that I think attention is a drug for people, and social media feeds that drug. And so they crave the likes and the reposts and the retweets, and they literally are refreshing their browser every few moments to see if anyone commented on that. So that's really quite amazing to me. What's your take on the way that people are using social media as an attention tool?
You hit the nail on the head there. It's this endless pursuit of vanity metrics that stroke the ego. That I know, we have our 5 kids here, and you ask the older ones, especially on Instagram, they will take down a photo after a few hours if it hasn't started to get enough likes. Like we've set this vanity metric system up where you're not. I don't know about you. I'm so glad that this all wasn't around.
I can't even. I
didn't like high school as it was, let alone
the pressure.
Oh, the pressure of constant, your Instagram, Snapchat world, and the ability to be validated 1,000 times a day or not validated 1,000 times a day. And that's a pressure thing. And the problem is I've seen the dark underbelly of all this stuff, because it's what we talk about a lot on our show and in the books. And I know people and this is not even on their brand Facebook pages, but personal ones, they'll ask open-ended questions just to get responses from people. And I'm like, what do you even gain from that? There's not even a business case for this. No, they'll ask questions like, and not even good ones, like chocolate or vanilla. And although it's a valid question for people to answer, they do it every day. And now, and this is the worst, now they do it with a color background. So it stands out.
But to your point about attention, because they're trying to cut through the clutter of everything else, and they're literally saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, I need you to see me. Like, that's the thing. Like, that's what's happened in our society, is that because people are not being seen and heard at home or with the people they care about, they then go out into a wider community and say, basically, I'm lonely, but they don't post that. They say, do you like chocolate or vanilla? But I need someone to talk to.
Yeah, and that's the biggest shift too, where I found Twitter was my original platform. It's what built my entire credibility in this space, and it's what got me the book deal and really started. I always have Twitter to thank for that. But Twitter in 2009 and Twitter in 2017 are just separate platforms.
So different. And
the attention side of things is what the difference is. I would log in 2009 on Twitter and I would say, hey, everybody. And people walk in and be like, hey, Scott's here.
Yeah.
I swear, if I wrote that today, how's everybody doing? I might get 3 replies.
Yeah.
I have 185,000 followers.
Yeah. It's not a barbecue anymore. It's a convention center.
That's the problem. It's a convention center. Everybody's in cubicles, blasting stuff out. There's no...
It's true. There's no conversation. Yeah, no, you're right.
I still am friends with the people I made friends with back then, but I really think, and Allison and I debate this all the time, saying, if we joined today on Twitter, what would the reaction be? Because I've also let the community erode on Twitter for me, and focus more on Facebook. And I check it every day, but I check it because we wrote in our books, tweet to us, and I have to make sure I stay on top of it. But it's more voyeuristic now too, right? It's more of watching celebrities and athletes and politicians.
It has changed. But I also think too, for people who really want to be able to get the right attention for their product, service, client, patient, member, whatever it is, they've got to know the platforms that community likes to engage in. Right. So for me, I'm a corporate business speaker. I am the girl who does the corporate leadership retreat. I do the big association event. I go in and go, here's what it's all about. Now you guys go ahead and do it. That's a LinkedIn client who's the EVP of marketing, who's the EVP of sales. They don't care what's happening on Instagram. While I have an Instagram account and post fabulous, fun champagne photos, they really don't care. But what's interesting is the EVP who books me from LinkedIn looks at my Instagram profile to see what kind of person I am. So I think when you have a public profile, people want to peek behind the curtain, but they don't necessarily want to engage with you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that's almost like a vetting. And the vetting is not necessarily to help you get the gig, but to see whether or not you're going to lose it. You know what I mean? They're looking and say, okay, what kind of photos are there? What kind of political, there's a lot of political reaction what's happening in the United States. And
crazy town. And
we're sitting up here in Canada over the border with a bucket of poutine wondering what's going to happen. But you'll notice that nothing is more we've never been in a more polarizing time in the recent history. And that means you can really, I don't think most people would hire you or me based on our tweets or our Instagram, but they will maybe not hire us because of it.
And there's an elimination.
Events want to be safe. They want to be, because they're the meeting planner, the executive, their name is on it when you walk up on stage. And if you make a joke about politics or whatever it's going to be, then they're the ones that get nailed for it. So it's it's a vetting on that point. And it's true. It's like the focus is LinkedIn for that, but the reference check is going to be Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah, when I've lectured at places like NYU and some Temple and some of the other universities that I've spoken to, some of the freshmen, I always ask them to clean up their digital dirt because, all of those major universities and some of my law firms in Philadelphia, they have people full-time on staff now and their only job is to check social media profiles before they accept an application, before they actually recruit and onboard someone. So it's become a very big part of call it your personal brand, call it your identity, whatever it is, but your reputation management, it's if you don't want your grandma to see it or your mom or your dad to see it or on the front page of the New York Times, it's probably not a good idea to use social.
I used to be in human resources and I used to do hiring, and I wish this stuff was around then.
Imagine.
It would have made it so much easier. I just would have went click, click.
Nope.
And also another reason why I'm happy that it wasn't around when you were younger, because an Instagram profile would not have been.
So when you think about the people that are potentially in maybe reading this book, and they are often part of a corporate business. They might have their own business. And what they're looking to do is, I think the world thinks they pay attention, Scott, but they just don't know how. You know, we've been told our whole lives, pay attention by our parents, by our teachers, by the flight attendants when we travel. Everyone says pay attention, but they don't know how. If you really know someone's paying attention to you, what are they doing?
I think it can boil all the way down to classical face-to-face to start with. Like you set the tone of your attention. So
Right.
if I'm meeting you, this could be a trade show booth, networking event, conference, lunch, coffee. Are you on your phone? Or are you talking to the person? That I think phones, although I'm one of the biggest tech geeks I know, love I run the whole company from my phone.
Sure.
I don't use it if I'm sitting with coffee. Whoever's with me, they get my attention.
Right. Because I think, we've made technology more important than people. I think that's the challenge. We've made the face.
How does it make anybody feel when you're talking to them?
Right, I know.
Right? And when you're talking, you're looking at it saying, there might be something more important than your hand.
That's exactly what you're saying. That's exactly what you're saying.
So that in the physical realm, the actual in-person realm, I think that's a real good definition of, do we give attention versus, hearing versus listening and all that type of stuff, where getting on their level. And actually Allison, who's I've mentioned a few times, my co-author of the books, co-host of the shows, and
also your gorgeous, talented, amazing rock star wife.
My amazing co-host in life, my wife. But she taught me how to give attention to the children better, which was you're on their level, and when they talk to you, you're looking at them, and they're not a nuisance or an interruption. And you can tell that's different for them. And I find it hard all the time not to be checking the phone. And here's the problem. Most of the time, I have an assistant. She gets most of the company emails and phone calls. I'm checking it because I want the attention. I want to see if my tweets got replied to, my Facebook post got like the Speaking Spill Mastermind thing had any comments. So I'm looking for that attention for myself, when in reality, it's also right in front of me. And that goes for coworkers or family, significant other, or whatever that is. Sometimes the attention you seek is already there, but we're ignoring it for other attention. And that'll backfire on you, either in the short game or the long game. That ends up backfiring. And when it comes to customers will tell you when you're not paying attention, because they'll escalate it, right? Yeah, they'll bring it up. Those were bad reviews, Yelp and TripAdvisor, Google and Facebook, angry tweets, all started with somebody usually in person or on the phone with you. Right. But they usually started somewhere, and they escalated because they weren't getting attention. Those bad Yelp reviews are a result of not giving your customers enough attention. And so when somebody calls me or emails me and says, can you help my buddy in California? He opened a high-end burger joint. He's getting ripped on Yelp. I'm like, what's the problem? He says, well, service, price, and food. And I'm like, he doesn't have a Yelp problem. He's got a business problem. Right. And none of us have a Yelp problem. None of us have a review problem. We have an attention problem.
Correct. Yeah.
We're not listening when people are saying something, or we're giving them the company line or the excuse. Now we have an out. Now we have a place where we can say, you're not going to give me attention.
Yeah.
The world will give me attention.
That's right. The power has shifted.
Directly, not even like frou-frou, soft, maybe your business. It'll directly impact your business. And if we don't pay attention, by the way, it doesn't matter if you do or not to the customer. They're one way or the other, they're going to get paid attention to.
They are. You're
decide if it's you first or the world first.
In the keynote, I talk about the definition of intentional attention. So what are you choosing to invest your attention in and not wasting your attention on? And we talk in the keynote about the fact that we are mindlessly and unconsciously spending our attention. And as we just sit and scroll through Facebook, it's just unconsciously paying attention when maybe you have a good looking partner, a child, someone who is there, who is craving that attention from you. So any final thoughts you want to share with people about this whole idea of attention and how attention does pay?
It goes back to the start. I really think that if we all just want attention, nobody gets it, right? Because we're all trying to take. And when you form something, when you make something, ability where you have a group, brands, people, employees, family that just want to give attention to each other, then it's wicked. It's a ridiculous world we live in. And I live it. That's how my relationship is with Allison. We're always looking out for each other and with the kids and with my peers in the speaking group, it does show that it does work, both in business and in life.
Nice. It has been a privilege to just jam with you and hang out. Thanks for sharing your brilliance on this topic. I appreciate you so much.
Privilege is all mine.